welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Thursday, guys. I hope your week is going well. I've got another video for you, and I'm continuing my series on the profiles on the 12 zodiac signs. And it is that time. Again, we are now getting to the fourth sign. We're going to be doing a profile on the sign of Cancer. I will also be talking to you guys a little bit about natal moon placements as well as the fourth house. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you drop me a comment below. Let me know. Do you have any prominent placements in Cancer, sun, moon, or rising, or maybe a fourth house emphasis in your natal chart? I'd love to hear from you guys. I always appreciate your thumbs up and your guys' comments. And don't forget to check out my beginners series, my Astro 101 course that I have on my website, where I teach beginners astrology and the ins and outs of being able to read your natal chart. You can find that and my Astro 201 for advanced techniques in my website. You can check that out at beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, so we're gonna get right into it today. Obviously, we're kind of going at this throughout this next year together. So whenever we see planets that are going through the particular signs, we're gonna touch on that planetary and zodiac kind of profile. So we're gonna be talking all about Cancer. Well, Cancer is the fourth sign of the zodiac. It is cardinal water, and it is ruled by the moon. And it has a natural connection and association with the fourth house in astrology. It is considered a feminine sign, and it is associated with the colors of silver and blue. And also the gemstone association would be ruby, but some people would also say pearl or moonstone are definitely alternatives to ruby. And we're going to talk all about first the mythology of the sign. I want to talk to you a little bit about the connection of the crab. Not many people know, and I think it's cool as I do these kind of zodiac profiles, to talk to you guys about how the various zodiac signs get their symbols and also their kind of connection in terms of the heavens. So basically the mythology behind Cancer and the zodiac sign of Cancer is associated with the Greek myth of the giant crab, Krachnos. So according to the myth, the crab was sent by the goddess Hera to distract Hercules during his battle with the Hydra, the multi-headed serpent. And while Hercules was duking it out with the serpent, fighting the Hydra, the crab pinched his foot with its claws, causing him pain and momentarily distracting him from his battle. Now this annoyed Hercules, and he crushed it under his foot. But Hera was very impressed by the crab's bravery and loyalty and placed his remaining crab parts in the sky, forming the constellation of Cancer. Now there's another story also where the crab was sent in another Greek myth, sent by Poseidon, the god of the sea, to protect the sea nymphs. However, the crab in that story was also crushed by Hercules during his battle with another serpent. So yeah, depending on which story you follow, it's pretty much the same ending. The crab gets crushed but is basically recognized for his bravery. So the symbol of the crab is associated with Cancer due to these myths. And we think about crabs in Cancer's like hard shell. It represents basically its protective nature. So that outer core that protects it, and also it's its home. And its soft interior reflects the emotional sensitivity of the sign. But you might be wondering, what does a toe-pinching crab have to do with the nurturing emotional sign of Cancer? Well, basically, you know, the outer shell represents that protective layer. It's also a cardinal sign, so, you know, it is active, so it does take action when it comes to its emotions. And just like Cancer, you know, crabs are tough on the outside, but sensitive on the inside. And it's about protecting their emotions and their vulnerability through that tough exterior. But also, like, crabs are cool, right? Like, they scuttle sideways and they have claws for days, and they're definitely interesting little creatures to watch. So that's the connection to the mythology. Now, the sign is ruled by the moon. And obviously the moon is a planet of emotions. It does represent the kind of subconscious side of your natal chart, your kind of private emotional nature. And the moon is associated with emotions as well as intuition and your subconscious mind. So these qualities are all kind of connected to the sign of Cancer. And in astrology, the moon represents the emotional core and the nurturing aspects of yourself. It governs things like your deepest feelings, your memories, and also your sense of security. So Cancers are really known for their emotional depth, their strong intuition, their nurturing and protective kind of ways. They're kind of seen as like the mama bears of the Zodiac. And when we think about the moon, it has this cyclical nature, right? We see the lunar cycle take place every single month where, you know, it's waxing and it's waning between its lunations. And this really, I think, represents the changeable and sometimes moody nature of Cancer, as the ebbs and the flows that we see emotionally. So just as the moon goes through phases, Cancers often experience emotional ups and downs. And the moon is also associated with home and family, which are important areas of life for Cancers because that connection to the 4th house and the representation of ancestors in the past and roots. These are signs that are deeply attached to their home and their families, and they're known for their ability to create warm, comfortable, and secure environments. Home is a huge focus for any major Cancer or 4th house placement. So basically, whether you are a Cancer or not, everybody's going to have Cancer somewhere in their natal horoscope, and both the moon as well as the placement of Cancer in your chart is shining a light on your emotional depths and your nurturing nature. So see this as a place in your chart where you're able to kind of connect more so with your inner kind of private world, as well as get more insight into your emotional kind of behaviors, as well as your roots and your family. Now, when we think about the connection of the home, you know, obviously crabs live in their shell, right? So that kind of represents that protective barrier. But I also think about the connection to their emotional needs, their sense of security, and that correlation with the moon, which is about our private lives and also our deepest feelings and our memories. So in astrology, when we look at the moon or when we look at the sign of Cancer, we're thinking about the past situations, how we've lived, how our ancestors lived, where we've been before. You know, we'll talk a little bit about that more in the 4th house, but it's basically really helping us kind of focus on the depths of our soul. Like if you look at the 4th house or if you look at the moon, there is some kind of reflection to who we are internally on the inside. This is also giving some insight to our personal kind of sanctuary, our private life, as well as the ebb and flow of our family dynamics as well. Now, when we think of the sign of Cancer, the key characteristics that come up, obviously, number one, I think of Cancer, I think of like the nurturers of the Zodiac, right? Because that's what they're known for. There is this very kind of maternal quality to that particular sign. But I think also it's not just nurturing, it's also caring for other people. There is this focus on the ability to provide comfort and support for those around them, friends, family, partners, loved ones. For example, you know, for me, I've always seen my Cancer friends as the ones who always are the ones to check up on me and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you need me to bring anything over, you know, when I'm under the weather? Like time and time again, it's always my Cancer friends who are asking that question. I also think about their highly intuitive nature. So this is the first water sign of the Zodiac that we are going to be looking at. And Cancers, like the other water signs, Scorpio and Pisces, are very intuitive, but I think especially so with that connection to the moon. They are very empathic. They can pick up emotions and needs of other people, and you know, this is what they act on because they're a cardinal sign. So, you know, Cancer, when I think of like Cancer parents that I know of or that I've met, they have sometimes a deep intuitive knowing of when something's wrong with their child, whether they're upset or they're not feeling well or something's going on with them emotionally. Even if the child doesn't say anything, they're able to kind of like read it and kind of see it on their face that something is off. Obviously kind of reflecting the highly intuitive nature of Cancer placements. They can also be extremely tenacious and determined. Do not underestimate them just because they are a crab. Remember, they are persistent and they don't give up very easily because they're a cardinal sign. They will keep working towards their goals and they will do whatever it takes to become emotionally secure. They know no ends when it comes to going after what they want for either emotional security or physical home security. They're also, you know, because they are so sensitive, they can very easily get their feelings hurt. And so that's something else that I've noticed about Cancer placements. They feel very deeply and they are very sensitive. And that's why when you see them get upset, sometimes they will kind of withdraw, right? They'll kind of pull back into their shell a little bit. They might cry during a sad movie or feel overwhelmed by, you know, news that's kind of coming out in the world because they can be deeply affected by the emotions of the collective and other people. They are protective, okay? Like I said, the mama bears of astrology. So they're very protective of their loved ones. They'll go to great lengths to keep them safe. I really feel that Cancer placements are really great for, you know, protecting other people and confronting other people who are emotionally vulnerable. So when I think of like, you know, children, animals, relatives, family members, things like that, like they have a tendency to want to defend and want to protect some of these people because they like to look out for their loved ones. They're very home-oriented. Because Cancers value their home and their family, and also they might enjoy spending a quiet evening at home, cooking a meal, or being around their loved ones, whether that's friends, family, partners, or roommates. Very creative creatures because they enjoy expressing themselves generally through things that are going to help them feel more emotionally at peace. So they have a knack, from what I found, expressing themselves through art, music, or writing. And because of their emotional nature, if they find an outlet or a way to be able to better express themselves, generally it can be really positive for not only their careers, but also for their mental health. And then also, they're very loyal. So Cancers, because they have a fixation and a connection to the past and also being very emotional, they're incredibly loyal and will often stand by the side of friends, family, partners through thick and thin. I think of like, yeah, some of the best friends, me personally, I have a lot of water placements, but some of the best friends that I've had for the longest periods of time have been people who have really prominent Cancer placements. Cancer moons and Cancer suns, I have found, are the people that I've known since like grade school, and I still have some of those people in my life, but they're incredibly loyal and they're very devoted. Now, when we think about the sign, and their strengths and their weaknesses, okay? So we see this with all 12 signs. Definitely for me, the strength would be their nurturing and their caring abilities, their intuition, their strong sense of family and home, very loyal and protective, emotionally intelligent. That's something else because they can kind of read and sense what other people are feeling or what other people need. Creative and imaginative, and they have a good memory, okay? So Cancer placements are kind of like elephants, like they don't forget anything. They will remember, you know, the time and the date that you had a conversation 8 years ago and like where you were and what you were wearing, so they can have really great memory. The challenges to Cancer placements that we can see is that they can be moody and changeable. So there can definitely be moods and tendencies to kind of be a little fierce and then withdraw. They can sometimes be overly sensitive, and a lot of that is because they feel things so deeply. This is one of the signs that can have a tendency to hold grudges, and a lot of that is also connected to one of their strengths, which is having a good memory, but that can also sometimes not work in their favor because it can be hard for them to give things up. Sometimes they can be very sentimental, which can allow them to develop kind of clingy or kind of possessive tendencies. That can definitely happen. Difficulty letting go of the past, being indecisive or fearful, that can happen because they're afraid of changing circumstances with their home or with, you know, the emotional kind of impact. And they may retreat into their shell when they get hurt. So whether you're physically getting hurt or whether they're emotionally hurt, their feelings are hurt, there is a tendency to withdraw, okay? So these are kind of the strengths and the weaknesses that we see with Cancer. Now, I always like to connect these signs to archetypes because I feel like looking at them through an archetypal lens is going to help us identify this particular sign out in the wild a little bit easier. And everybody's going to tell you, well, you know, you've got Cancer, so it's the crab, okay? So we talked a little bit about where that came from in terms of the mythology, but when we think of the crab, like I said, soft inner body, right? And then we've got this kind of exterior that is kind of fierce and sometimes sharp, and sometimes it can be a little bit kind of combative. They're tough, they're protective when they need to be, but they're also deeply emotional and empathic. So that's just like the general kind of archetype. But probably the second archetype that we're going to see with Cancer is going to be the archetype of the mother. I see this connected primarily because of the moon. So we think of like the moon and that kind of connection to the divine feminine, to the womb, to the ancestors, and also anything that is kind of connecting us to the home. Cancers are known for their nurturing and caring nature. They often take on the role of the caregiver, or the healer, or the mother figure in their relationships and their social circles. They're like the mother hen, right? I always laugh, like kind of going through my 20s, like going out with some of my friends, and I could always identify, you know, who was going to be the caretaker. And it was like one of two friends that I had, like a group of a dozen, and they were both Cancers. They were always the ones to kind of make sure, okay, you got to ride home, you're good, like go home, get something to eat, go to sleep, make sure you're up for work tomorrow, like are you good, do you need me to, you know, call somebody to pick you up? Just would always kind of run around and kind of like be the mother hen. And so that really does kind of come through, I think, through you know, this archetype, that whether it's a man or a woman, they have this really gentle but also really action-oriented kind of I'm gonna take care of you vibe. So you can't miss that. Another one would definitely be the healer, because I feel like Cancers are drawn to either careers or hobbies that involve healing or nurturing others. You'll see this a lot, especially through like a Cancer midheaven, or maybe you'll see this through like a Cancer sun. But yeah, definitely, you know, careers such as nursing, counseling, cooking, you know, homemaking. These are all connected to the natural ability to provide comfort and support to those around them. So definitely these kind of archetypes of healers is very strong when you think about, you know, the sign of Cancer. I also think about the home body, because Cancer values their home and their family above all else. And oftentimes Cancer placements or fourth housers are happiest when they're surrounded by loved ones in a cozy, comfortable environment. But this could also be somebody who is really fixated on the home, right? It could be the interior designer, it could be maybe even the architect, it could be, you know, somebody who focuses on working from home. So any kind of like real strong kind of connection to your home base and that kind of homebody personality does correlate with Cancer. And then finally, the memory keeper, right? So not many people talk about this, but like I said, Cancers have excellent memories, and they're often the keepers of family history and tradition. They cherish their past and their memories, and they share it with their loved ones. So whether this is being responsible for like maintaining, you know, family traditions, or maybe holding on to family heirlooms, or maybe somebody who is responsible for, you know, kind of the family history, the family tree, maybe somebody who is a collector or a historian of sorts. I could definitely see that with like a lot of really strong Cancer or fourth house placements. Now, when we think about Cancer and how it correlates to the health and the body, you know, health and wellness is really important with all of the 12 signs. And like, if you get into learning more about medical astrology, you'll learn that each and every one of the 12 zodiac signs correlates with a different part of the body. So I like to talk about this and kind of really put an emphasis on what each sign represents astrologically. Cancer is associated with the stomach and the digestive system, okay? So that's the main kind of themes revolving around Cancer. Obviously being ruled by the moon, certain signs rule different systems, and then planets also have connections and correlations with different systems as well. The moon rules the stomach, and I think that's the direct kind of connection to digestion. But the moon also governs the breast, the womb, and also bodily fluids. So cancers in general, right, or if you have really strong fourth house placements, can be more prone to digestive issues, stomach ulcers, and other ailments relating to the stomach and digestive system. They may also experience emotional eating, using food as a way to comfort themselves when they're feeling down, and anything kind of connected to your emotions in general. When we think of emotional disorders like stress and anxiety, obviously that can have a direct impact and kind of correlation with your stomach and your digestion and also your eating habits. So that's a pretty strong signature that I see with Cancer placements, fourth house placements as well. But if you happen to have a lot of like really strong Cancer placements or fourth house placements in your chart, it's just really important, I think, number one, to eat a balanced diet, especially stuff that's very fiber rich and things that can help support your digestion. Try to do your best to avoid stress because stress can definitely, I think, worsen digestive issues. Practicing relaxation techniques like yoga and meditation and deep breathing exercises can be really helpful to help kind of better manage emotions. Stay hydrated, drink plenty of water, obviously because Cancer rules kind of and has that connection to bodily fluids. This is also important to stay active to improve digestion and reduce stress. Pay attention to any signs of digestive discomfort or any problems with your gut, and also, you know, keep an eye on what's going on with your chest and your breasts and your womb, because these can be areas that Cancer can have some issues as well. Obviously, consult with a doctor if you have anything specific going on, and really looking at your natal chart specifically and like the aspects that you may have in the fourth house or with Cancer is going to give you more insight as to how to balance that out, what remedies there may be, and also just knowing that this can be a more sensitive area and that your emotions kind of correlate and connect to your digestive issues can be so helpful in being able to kind of get them under control. Now, I like to talk to you guys about the difference between the sun, moon, and the rising in this particular sign. So first of all, there's a lot of things that go into being able to kind of talk about the different personality traits as well as how somebody looks. But off of the bat, when I think about a Cancer rising, the rising sign is going to represent the first house in your chart. And this is going to be kind of more correlating to your appearance. So this might be more how you look and also like the first impression that you give to other people. So, you know, when I think of a Cancer rising physical appearance, I see them as sensitive, caring and nurturing. They can kind of be like checking on other people. There can be a sense of them having kind of a more round or softer features, a comforting face, and oftentimes they have really kind of large and expressive eyes, right? I always think of like those like plush toys, you know, that have like the big eyes and they look like the big like puppies or like the big kittens or whatever. Like that's how I see Cancer rising eyes. And also their physical features may mimic the moon, which rules them. So something I've noticed about Cancer risings is that they have a tendency to have a lighter complexion, even if you may not have, you know, a background or an ethnicity as Caucasian. There is a little bit more of a kind of like a cooler or a little bit more of a creamier kind of complexion, I think, to their skin and to their face. But their face will change depending on maybe the time of the month, depending maybe on the angle or the lighting. But I've always noticed that Cancer rising faces have a tendency to kind of rise and fall, similar to that of the moon. They can also have a much more prominent kind of like chin, and some of them will have like a little bit of like a narrower, kind of more of a point to their chin like the moon, or they can have a bit of like a cleft chin. But I have seen a more prominent kind of, you know, chin in some of my Cancer risings. Soft bodies, usually a little bit softer features, softer hands as well, because there is this sense of having everything that's kind of smooth and a little bit more round, but definitely fuller in the face and in the eyes. For Cancer suns, you know, obviously the sun represents your identity as well as like your ego and how you express yourself. So the Cancer sun individual has a tendency, I think, to be deeply intuitive, emotional, and, you know, definitely protective. We think of the sun as where we're putting our energy or where we're kind of taking action. So, you know, they're nurturing, and I notice that Cancer suns have a tendency to put other people before themselves, where the Cancer rising is kind of like, you know, okay, I'll nurture you, but I'm going to do my own thing. The Cancer sun has a tendency to really be for a living, whether it's for a family member or a child or a partner or their job, they're really focusing on taking care of or nurturing other people. They also can have softer features and also a more gentle demeanor, but I feel like the ascendant is going to play a little bit more of a role in terms of their physical appearance. And then when we think of the Cancer moon, obviously the moon is at home in this sign. It's in its domicile. So with the moon representing your emotional nature and how you process your emotions and your feelings, you know, the Cancer moon is extremely sensitive. It's in touch with its emotions. It's very intuitive. It also has a tendency, I think, to definitely in the face, because the moon has correlations and connections to the face, to have some of the similar appearances that I see with the Cancer rising. Definitely a little bit more moody though. And it depends on the placement of the moon, but I find that of all of three of them, Cancer moons are definitely the most moody and the most in touch with the feminine side, or the most kind of in touch with its inner emotional kind of world, which is always kind of, you know, kind of going back and forth, because it does have like waves in terms of its feelings and emotions. This is also the placement that I feel like has a tendency to fixate on the past the most, to think about the past, to get stuck on the past sometimes, to not want to forget the childhood home, or, you know, the childhood dog, or has a really difficult time, you know, breaking away from tradition, or even from, you know, relationships to the mom or the mother or the homeland. That seems to be a huge fixation with Cancer moon placements. Now we're going to talk a little bit about planets in Cancer, but as you guys know, certain planets are going to behave or perform better in certain signs more so than others. So because Cancer is ruled by the moon, when the moon is in Cancer, it's in its domicile. So it basically means it's at home, it's comfortable. And planets, you know, what you want to think of is when you put a planet in a house, that's where you're going to see the most action. So if we're talking about the moon in various houses, which I'll go through in a second, is going to say there's much more ebbs and flows, much more reflecting, maybe much more emotional connection to that particular house. The sign is the lens which the planet is going to express itself. So regardless of where the moon is placed, in terms of houses, the moon in Cancer is at home. It's just perhaps going to be a little bit stronger in one particular area of your life, depending on the house that it's in. Now, in terms of exaltation, right? So this is where, you know, Cancer planets are going to perform the best. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. You know, obviously Jupiter is traditionally associated with Sag and Pisces, but it's in its exaltation because this is the place where I think Jupiter has the most wisdom, it has the most intuition, the most expansion, and it's expanding things like home, family, intuition, emotions, things revolving around even like femininity, or any kind of connection to fertility. As we know, Jupiter has associations with that. And then, you know, when we think of planets in their fall or in its detriment, so really what I focused on was planets in its fall. So Saturn obviously has associations with Capricorn. So Saturn in Cancer can be in its, you know, position of being in its fall. It can be debilitated here. When we think of Saturn, which is hard work, dedication, responsibility, limitation, you know, putting that into Cancer can make it difficult to emotionally connect, or issues revolving around home, family, homeland, ancestors, you know, mother-related things. Expressing emotions, kind of similar to like a Capricorn moon. So difficult to have that there. And then we have Mars in Cancer, which is also a difficult place to have because it's also in its fall. So we've got Mars, which is traditionally associated, what we see with Scorpio and Aries, exaltation in Capricorn. So when it's moving through Cancer, we think of putting Mars, the warrior, you know, into a feminine moon-ruled sign where it's not direct. It kind of zigs and it zags because it's moody, right? So it's not an easy place to have Mars. So planets in these particular placements are definitely going to perform a little bit differently. Obviously, when you're looking at a chart, you're taking into consideration, well, what are the aspects? Because you could have a planet that doesn't necessarily perform very well in a certain sign, But if it's got supporting aspects or, you know, certain things that are going on in the chart that could be helping or hindering it, it could make it a little bit more significant. All right, so we talked about the moon. We talked about the moon being in Cancer and being at home here, really looking to focus on creating a comfortable, cozy home environment. That's really what the moon in Cancer wants to do. Very emotionally sensitive, very nurturing, and very intuitive. We talked a little bit about the sun being in Cancer and how that has kind of connections to the identity and the ego. But when the sun is in Cancer, they can also be really applying some of these Cancer kind of tendencies to their career or their overall goals. And I think they have a strong sense of wanting to create, you know, security and belonging for themselves and those who are around them. Now, Mars in Cancer is a placement that can be a little moody. This can definitely make a person a little bit more passive-aggressive, emotional, or sensitive. They may have a strong desire to protect their loved ones and their home. But when I think of Mars, I also think about motivation. So it might mean that they are motivated by things revolving around home, family, you know, sensitivity. And it's only when they feel safe and secure that they can actually feel like they can get something done. Now, what about Venus in Cancer, right? So Venus in Cancer is a placement that is going to be about, you know, love, beauty, harmony, resources, putting it in the sign of the moon. I find that this makes a person very nurturing and very caring and sensitive in their relationships. And they may have a strong desire to create a comfortable or cozy home environment. Venus in Cancer is notorious for loving family, you know, loving get-togethers and gatherings in the home, interior design, beautiful, comfortable spaces, and a love for entertaining in the home space or some kind of relationship with money and home. So it can be home improvement projects. It can also be about working in property or real estate, maybe even home or family-based businesses as well. Now, Mercury in Cancer, this is obviously a planet that deals with communication and learning or travel. So when you put Mercury in Cancer, this is a placement that makes a person very intuitive and emotional in their thinking and communication style. They may be able to read people and kind of read their emotions and figure out how to best kind of approach people and like kind of be like disarming. They can have an excellent memory with this placement and be able to, I think, yeah, like really tap into how to kind of best connect to or relate to people on an emotional level. Really soft-spoken, very gentle, very nurturing in how they communicate with other people with this placement. Now, Jupiter in Cancer is extra, like I said, it's exalted, so it's a little bit extra sensitive. And it can make somebody very nurturing, protective, and family-oriented, but it can also create a strong desire of needing security and belonging for themselves and those around them. They may like really want a big home because Jupiter can be about growth. They may also want to live in a foreign land. They may also be extremely intuitive because of the exaltation with Jupiter. And they can be somebody who is really drawn to teaching or educating in some capacity because Jupiter can be seen as a mentor, but they may be drawn to like wanting to teach children or wanting to teach something revolving around home or intuitive development or anything in regards to like metaphysical studies. Now, Saturn in Cancer, like we talked about, it can be challenging because it's in its opposite sign. But this placement makes a person very responsible and very protective and sometimes cautious in their approach to developing a family or a home life. They have a strong sense of duty and a desire to create a safe and stable environment. There can be some kind of karma revolving around ancestors, their home, or one of their parents where they're feeling blocked and that they have to move through some of these lessons before they're able to go and have safety and security or develop a home and family on their own. There's also responsibility to learn about emotional boundaries with that placement as well. Now, what about Uranus in Cancer? This is a placement that can make a person very unique, independent, and innovative when it comes to their approach with home and family. They may have a strong desire to break free from traditional family rules and expectations. So when we think of Cancer and that connection to safety, security, living in one place, like putting down roots, Uranus in this sign might feel like I don't want to buy a house. You know, I would like to be able to kind of roam freely and kind of land wherever I'd like, or I want to live in a communal situation with roommates, or I would like to, you know, not have the limitations of feeling like I have to come home to someone. That's definitely a theme with Uranus in Cancer. But it can also mean that they rebel against the idea of feeling like they have to be settled in any one particular place, or have a traditional home or family or kind of like relationship, and break free from maybe what they've experienced when they were younger. Now, Neptune in Cancer is a placement that can make a person very sensitive, very empathic, imaginative to their approach with home and family. They can have a strong desire to create a sense of unity and harmony within their family and their home environment. It can also mean that they come from a background of family members who are artists, poets, creatives, people who are mystics or very sensitive, or there can be something kind of like mysterious about their upbringing or their past, or there can be questions revolving around where they come from, or like their lineage, right? So that can be something else that you can see with Neptune in Cancer. Very intuitive, very psychic placement. Then we've got Pluto in Cancer. So Pluto in Cancer represents a very powerful and transformative influence when it comes to a person's emotional landscape and family dynamics, right? Pluto is like the power player. It is about death and rebirth and transformation and changing something. So it's about, you know, somebody having intense emotional depth and potential for profound change in their inner world. And I really feel like these people have experienced very intense emotional experiences, especially in relation to their family and their home life. They have a deep connection to their home and family and a desire to protect and nurture their loved ones, but they have to work through changing and transforming family or home dynamics, especially when it comes to like having children and expanding within, you know, their family and their relatives, and like being able to kind of end certain karmic patterns that may not be conducive to having a healthy home or family environment. So that seems to be like their lessons with that particular placement. Obviously, Pluto has not been in Cancer for a very, very long time. Most of these people are, you know, already transitioning or you know, they've been gone for a little while. Most of the Pluto stuff is going to relate from about Leo on for most people, but there may be some people out there watching it. All right, so let's talk about the North and the South Node before we kind of get to the 4th house and the moons. So when we think about the North Node in astrology, this is what we are learning in this lifetime to move towards. So whether you have North Node in the 4th house or North Node in Cancer, both can kind of be similar and they can kind of correlate, but think of the North Node as like a journey towards emotional growth and establishing a sense of security and belonging, right? North Node in Cancer. It signifies really like a need to prioritize home, family, and nurturing connections. So this nodal placement is about developing emotional intelligence and creating a nurturing environment for yourself and for others. By embracing this energy of Cancer and this placement, you know, you're learning that you can find fulfillment by nurturing yourself and others and create a harmonious home and family environment, and also develop higher emotional intelligence. That seems to be like the focus. So if you have a North Node in Cancer, look at which house that's in, right? That's the area where you're experiencing growth. And then you want to look at where your moon is in your chart, and that's going to show you how you're able to fulfill that. Look at the aspects between your moon and the North Node. On the other hand, let's say you have your South Node in Cancer, that means you have your North Node in Capricorn. So it suggests that emotional security, family connections, and caregiving were significant themes in your previous incarnations or during your early part of your current life. And so with the South Node in Cancer, the North Node in Capricorn, you know, you have a tendency to be emotionally sensitive and protective and nurturing. You carry those qualities into this life. But there's a strong connection to home and family that maybe you're working on kind of like releasing or letting go of. And there's a tendency sometimes to be overly dependent on others for emotional support, and you may be overprotective of other people. So you're really channeling that North Node in Capricorn. A lot of Cancer Capricorn axis, whether it's North or South Node, is also about home, family, past, you know, or one of your dominant parents. And then, you know, Capricorn would be, you know, where you're going in the future and your responsibility, your career, your status, and then your other parent. So you're going to kind of see that a lot of it can deal with like home and private life versus kind of public life and career. that you're working towards. And if you have the South Node in Cancer, obviously look at your moon and the aspects, but also look at Saturn, because that's going to correlate with your North Node in Capricorn. Now, Cancer has a strong connection and correlation with the 4th house, right? Because it is the 4th sign in the zodiac. The moon has connections to the 4th house as well. And so the 4th house, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, home, family, property, but there's so many more things to it. It represents the foundation of your house, of your life, right? Your house, I'm thinking. But the 4th house is, if we think of the 4th house as like the foundation of the chart, like let's say that is like the floorboards, which the rest of your chart is kind of built upon. The 10th house represents, you know, the connection to your career and your status and your visibility and like climbing to the top. You would not get there without having your 4th house, okay? So the 4th house is really important. It's not just about your home or your family. Think of it as the foundation, and also think of it as the womb of the natal chart, okay? I see like the 4th house in the IC is like the place where the soul kind of enters into the chart, and this is like where you were gestating before you were born. Now, obviously the 4th house has connections to Cancer and the moon. It's also one of the angular houses. So the 1st house, the 4th house, the 7th house, and the 10th house are all angular houses, and they're considered to be some of the most important houses in your birth chart. So even though Cancer may not be your sign on your 4th house, unless you're an Aries rising, you know, but still the 4th house is important because it is going to represent some of these themes revolving around nurturing, protecting, and kind of creating that home space. Now, the 4th house is connected to your home environment, both the physical structure and the emotional atmosphere. So think of like the family that resides in it, but it also symbolizes the roots, your ancestry, your heritage. You know, it reflects your early life experiences and the nurturing that you received while you were a child. And this house is deeply connected to the maternal figure or the nurturing parent in one's life. Now, in a broader sense, the 4th house is the inner self. It's the private life, the emotional core of an individual. This is who you are when all the blinds are closed, when the door is locked, when nobody can see what you're doing, what you do in your private life inside of your house. This is the house of the soul, and this is where one finds solace and comfort and security, but it is also a water house. These are considered houses that can be about definitive endings, the 4th, 8th, and 12th house. This is the house that's associated with old age, and also your final resting place, also known as your burial. So this will talk a lot about the end of life. In my interpretation, the 4th house talks about more how the end of life actually comes, or like what it looks like in terms of your end of life as you get older. I see death more through the 8th house, both the cusp of the 8th house, the placement of the 8th house lord, as well as its aspects. And then the 12th house talks about kind of the reincarnation of the soul. But if you're wondering, if you're anything like me, I have 4 planets in the 4th house. So I'm very much a 4th houser. But if you're anything like me, I often kind of think about like, what is it going to be like when I'm 85? And like, where am I going to live? And like, what is my funeral going to be like? And like, what's going to happen at the end? You know, so there can be this fixation of like, what will happen at the end of your life. There can also be this really strong connection to land. I don't know if those of you guys who have like 4th house placements, whether this is homes you've lived in, your homeland, maybe the town you grew up in, maybe it's your childhood home or a family member's home, but 4th house placements can get extremely attached to specific places and homes, and can be extremely sentimental also with things kind of connected to family. Now, the 4th house is also opposite of the 10th house, which represents your public life, career, and reputation. So while the 10th house deals more with like your external world, the 4th house deals more with the internal world and your private life and your emotional landscape. So depending on the sign that's on your 4th house cusp, it can have like a different meaning. But I would just say that the 4th house and also planets that are kind of on the cusp of the 4th house can also play a really strong role in kind of talking about some of your 4th house experiences. So like, for example, let's say you don't have Cancer in the 4th house, but you have your moon very close to your IC, right on the cusp of, or the beginning of the 4th house. This can also be a Cancer signature. It can indicate a really strong emotional connection to the home and the family. Versus, let's say you have Saturn in the 4th house or on the IC, this can indicate an indication of restriction or responsibility in the home environment. So you want to look at planets that are really close to the IC in the chart, the cusp of the 4th house, or that are right along the 4th house, because that's going to also kind of give you more insight in terms of maybe what you're dealing with at the ends of life, or maybe some of your kind of private home or family life themes. So you don't have to have Cancer in the 4th house to kind of have like a very strong Cancer signature. So I wanted to talk to you guys not just about the planets in the sign of Cancer, something that's been really interesting for me. So like in recent months, I've had the North Node's been transiting my moon, and I've been thinking a lot about the moon. I've been learning a lot about the moon and kind of going a little bit more in depth and trying to kind of understand the moon better and the importance of it in the natal chart. And so I thought I would be cool to talk to you guys about the moon in the various houses. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in Cancer. Everybody's going to have a moon placement. It could be in a completely different sign. But I think it would be cool to talk to you guys about the moon, because this represents, like I said, similar to Cancer in the 4th house, the emotional body. And I think we're so quick to just say, well, I'll just listen to my sun horoscope, or I'll listen to my rising sign horoscope. And while they may connect and correlate, and I kind of find that maybe we get into this like repetitive nature of just tell me what's going to happen, or just tell me what I need to do, or where I need to focus, which is very, you know, the sun or maybe the ascendant. The horoscope for the moon, I think, is incredibly important. And I've spent the last year personally trying to follow more of my moon horoscope because I have found that by listening to the moon horoscope, it's going to oftentimes tell me the things that I need to hear or that I need to be aware of, and how it connects and correlates to my emotional state. So unlike the take action rising or sun, the moon is kind of like, hey, this is how you're feeling, and this is what might be coming up for you emotionally, and this is what you might want to be kind of sitting and like marinating on, and what things are coming up for you that is really important for you on an emotional level. Anyway, so those of you guys who have Cancer placements probably can appreciate that. But let's talk about the moon through the various houses. And I want to talk to you guys about what it may mean. Obviously, aspects and signs are going to be a whole other layer, and this is where it kind of pays to know your chart or get a reading. But I want to talk to you guys about the moon in the houses, and then the ages that correlate with the moon. And this is something that I learned about a while ago, and I found it really interesting and like really insightful. So some of you guys may have already kind of hit your moon age. Some of you guys may have not hit it yet, depending on what house it's in. Essentially, in so many ways, the age will kind of correlate to when the moon or the emotional body is really doing the most development. So when we think of the moon, our emotional state, our emotional maturity, our homes, our family, our intuitive nature, this is when we're going to see it really kind of reach its peak, okay? So we're going to talk about the moon in the 1st house first. So if you happen to have your moon in the 1st house, the 1st house represents age 0 to 6 years old, okay? So having your moon in the 1st house means that these years were very pivotal for you when it comes to your moon. Look at your chart. What house is Cancer? The moon rules that house. So there were some really big or significant developments likely from the time you were born until you were 6 years old, which correlates with the moon and also the house of Cancer. For me, these are people that wear their emotions on their sleeves, right? Because the 1st house is the house of action. So having your moon in the 1st house can indicate a strong emotional connection and also a very strong connection to your emotional or physical appearance and how you present yourself to the world. So it might be hard to kind of mask or hide your emotions, similar to that of an Aries moon. And you may be very sensitive to the opinions of others and have a strong need for emotional security. But ages 0 to 6, there was some real strong development of some of your core emotional values, your core emotional needs. Maybe some of the emotional kind of traits you were demonstrating really early on at this age was really who you ultimately ended up kind of becoming, which is probably like a little bit of a spitfire. But that particular period of time was really important for you for developing, I think, your core emotional traits. So you might want to kind of do some astrological research, look at which house Cancer rules, and also what happened during that time. All right, so we're going to talk about the moon in the 2nd house. All right, so the moon in the 2nd house is connected with the ages of 7 to 13 years of age. All right, so this is also the age that kind of correlates with Taurus. So the moon in the second house, first of all, is a nice placement because of the moon's kind of connection, you know, with its exaltation to Taurus / second house. So this is a nice place to have the moon. It suggests a really strong emotional connection to your material possessions and financial security. You may have fluctuating income or financial situations, and you may have a sense of self-worth that's tied to your financial status. Why? Second house is what I possess, what I value. The moon is changeable and it's your emotions. So you are affected by what you possess. You feel good based off of what you're eating or what you're spending or what you're consuming. And obviously age 7 to 13 is really important for you. So look at which house Cancer is in your chart, and something about the age 7 to 13 probably is when you started developing some sense of value system. You think about like when you were a kid and you were getting money in your birthday cards and you were like, wow, I've got like $5. Like I can do something with this. I can go to the store and buy something, you know, but you could have also developed a sense of style, food preferences. There could have been a sense of really learning the value of something, or you started becoming really emotionally attached to something or someone. And I think a lot of this kind of deals with also developing the awareness of what it is that you need for safety and security during that particular age. All right, so we're gonna move to the third house, and the third house moon is connected to the ages of 14 to 20 years of age, okay? And so this has connections and correlation to Gemini, of course, even if you're not a Gemini moon. But the moon in the third house, we're putting the moon in the house of communication, learning, short distance trips. So this can indicate a strong emotional connection to your immediate environment. This can include things like your siblings, your neighbors, your local community. And you may have a strong need for communication and intellectual stimulation, and your emotions can fluctuate based off of your environment. All right, so think about which house Cancer rules in your chart. Go and look at which house that is. It looks like something between, you know, the ages of 14 and 20 was when you really started developing, I think, your emotional intelligence and like learning how to communicate and express your feelings. Or you may have really realized that, you know, it is important to have a strong bond with a sibling, or to, you know, call and talk to your family members, or to get to know your neighbors. Maybe this is a time where also you kind of realized and recognized that, you know, you needed to kind of change your environment, or maybe you needed to have experiences where you were kind of moving and being in other areas, and the impact that that played on you, right? Because third house can be kind of like about change and movement. Anyway, third house moons, they like to go for drives, I have noticed, to process emotions. They like to talk on the phone to work through their feelings and their emotions as well. And it may be with family, or it may be with like other kind of like loved ones, where they can kind of hash out what they're thinking and what they're feeling to kind of work through some of their emotions. So, all right, we're gonna move to the fourth house moon. So the moon is very comfortable in this house. Obviously look at the sign and the aspects, and also look at which house Cancer rules if you have your moon in the fourth house. This correlates to ages 21 to 27, okay? So when we think about like the progressed lunar return, you know, there's a reason why when people are 27, a lot of people move back home, or they go and they make peace with, you know, their upbringing or their family, or they return back to, you know, where they were born. The fourth house moon has a strong connection emotionally to the family and the home life, right? For good or for bad, there is a connection there. And there may be a deep need for emotional security and strong attachment to your roots and your heritage. So when we think about age 21 to 27, this is when a lot of people are reflecting on, okay, what do I want for the foundation of my life? Where do I want to live? Do I want to have a family? Do I want to buy a house? Do I go back home? Am I, you know, starting to really realize and focus that it's important to have a relationship with my parents or with my roots? Am I learning about my lineage? Something happened around 21 to 27, if you have a fourth house moon, that was kind of bringing you home to your own kind of emotional nature, and making you kind of really kind of connect, I think, with your ancestors and with your past. So obviously look at which house Cancer rules, but these can be people who are incredibly emotionally attached to family, the past, or specific home places, and also people who can be very, very sensitive. All right, so we have the fifth house moon. So if you have your moon in the fifth house, this correlates with ages 28 to 34. And so when we think of this time period has connections and correlations to Leo. Obviously, the moon in the 5th house indicates a strong emotional connection to your creativity, your self-expression, romantic relationships, and the inner child. You may be emotionally sensitive and have a strong need for fun and enjoyment in life. You're creative, you're spontaneous, you like to take risks, you can be very loud and very proud. And when I think about the moon in the 5th house, I think about the inner artist, I think about the inner kind of playmate, like really being so strongly and emotionally kind of in touch with like that inner child, that is just like so prominent with the 5th house moon, very playful, very creative. And obviously age 28 to 34, that if you're already there or if you're getting there, this is when there is this real sense of emotional maturity that happens. You know, that connection with Leo is, okay, you know, maybe I've figured out where I'm going to live and I've bought a place, or I've, you know, gotten a secure living situation. Now what do I create? Do I create a business? Do I have children? You know, do I fall in love with a new hobby? So there is something that really evolves in a very creative way around that time, and it can be really such a pivotal time when it comes to emotional fulfillment. And also I think of the connection between the sun and the moon here, that there is like this real coming together of, you know, what you're hoping to achieve through your sun, and also emotional fulfillment through your moon. All right, so we're going to look at now the moon in the 6th house. And when the moon's in the 6th house, it's going to correlate obviously with what appears to be age anywhere from like 25 to 41. So it really kind of depends. But yeah, excuse me, 35 to 41. So 35 to 41. So the moon in the 6th house obviously has this connection to health, work, and daily routines. Okay, so you may have a fluctuating work situation. You may have a strong need for emotional security in your daily life, emotional connections to coworkers, to pets, right? You might be a creature of habit. But when I think about this placement, I think about the connection to Virgo. And maybe for you, you know, when you are 35 to 41, there is more of this focus on how can I be of service? You know, how can I have better health? You know, what am I here to do? Who can I help? And it kind of takes on like that Virgo vibe. And maybe that's when you start to kind of regulate some of your health and your habits, or you start to kind of see the connection between, you know, your health and also your emotions. That's very possible. Look at where Cancer is in your chart, because it's going to give you some insight. And if you haven't hit 35 to 41 yet, know that that's that time where you're really going to start to kind of get things into, I think, like a cycle that's going to be a little bit more stable, either for work or for some of your health habits. And this is also, I think, when people kind of figure out like, what is my purpose and what am I here to do? All right. So we're going to move to the natal moon in the 7th house. So if you have your natal moon in the 7th house, this is going to be ages 42 to 48. So obviously that can have connections to kind of Libra, because that's the 7th house age. So moon in the 7th house, obviously angular house. So this is an active house similar to 1st and 4th. It can indicate a strong emotional connection to your relationships and to your partnerships. Okay, but remember that the moon is constantly kind of waxing and waning. It is the most active sign. So it can represent changes in relationships. 7th house moons can have a variation of different serious relationships in their life. They can be very emotionally sensitive in their relationships and have a strong need for emotional security in their partnerships. When you are aged 42 to 48, okay, this is when you've gone through a whole series of relationships. You've figured out what you like, what you don't like. You get more serious about commitments and what it is that you do want, or who you do want to partner with in relationships right around the time that you hit this age. And that's when you might actually start to see some of your best stuff happening in relationships. Obviously, look to where Cancer is in your chart, because that's going to give you some insight as to who or what you have relationships to that are going to be kind of maturing. And also realizing that how you feel in regards to the relationships you have with other people. Right. All right, so now we got the moon in the 8th house. All right, so this is going to be for ages 49 to 55. So if you have not hit this age yet, okay, if you have your natal moon in the 8th house, when you are 49 to 55,
this is when you see a natural like maturation of your moon. So the moon in the 8th house can suggest a really strong emotional connection to deep transformative experiences, including sexuality, death, and rebirth. So you may have a deep need for emotional security in your relationships and a strong intuition for the hidden aspects of life. Death, sex, taxes, taboo, anything that can represent kind of like mysticism, healing, spirituality, all kind of connected to the 8th house, karmic entanglement. I would say 8th house placements, you know, like learning a lot about psychology can be helpful for you. And you may be able to read other people, but it's not until you reach this peak period, I think of like 49 to 55, that you start really slowing down and kind of going like, why do I act the way that I do? And like, why do I respond this way? And like, where has there been such dramatic changes and transformations in my home life, in my relationships, in my private world? That has maybe brought up what felt like crisis, but really it was meant to kind of give you some major life changes so you could have like purge and purification, so you could have new opportunities to start over. So you can be very emotionally resilient with this placement, but yeah, definitely like much more, I think, introspection on why you behave the way that you behave as you're getting kind of to that peak period. Obviously look to where Cancer is in your chart to get a little bit more insight there. All right, so let's say your moon's in the 9th house. And if your moon's in the 9th house, this is going to be representing ages 56 to 62. The 9th house obviously has this strong kind of Sagittarian kind of vibe to it. It can indicate a strong emotional connection to your spiritual beliefs, higher education, long distance travel. This can also be about having a strong need for emotional security in your beliefs and a deep intuition for understanding the world around you. These are people who are like, I need to live in a foreign land. You know, I need to go back to college and get my degree as I get older. I need to be the teacher. I need to publish the book. I need to connect with the mentor. On an emotional level, there is this strong need to keep expanding their beliefs and their philosophy and experiencing the world and all the different culture and experiences and people and places that's out there. I feel like 56 to 62 is a time where, you know, some of you guys may publish a book, or some of you guys may go back and get a degree, or you may decide that's when you're going to become a teacher or a mentor of some kind. There may be this natural instinctive or intuitive knowing that that's what you're meant to be doing, but it may not really play out until closer to that time. It may also mean that this is when you have some really big changes revolving around how you see the world, and there can be some shifts in like your belief system that's happening around that time as well, which can coincide with either education or travel. Obviously look to where Cancer is in your chart to give you a little bit more context in terms of how that's going to play out. And then we have the 10th house. So let's say your moon is in the 10th house. So this is a very public placement. So both the 7th and the 10th house can have a little bit more public recognition. But the 10th house represents the age of 63 to 69, okay? So the moon in the 10th house suggests a very strong emotional connection to your career, your public reputation, and your social status. You may have a fluctuating career situation or a strong need for emotional security in your professional life. Now, the moon in the 10th house has this natural kind of like leader, manager, you know, kind of like superstar personality, somebody who can get recognition, somebody who's very emotionally tied to their status or their work or their career. But when I think of, you know, age 63 to 69, I think about how these are people who may be feeling like they're working their whole life to reach some sense of emotional fulfillment when it comes to their career and their reputation, right? And then I think about how they may get there, and then once they get there, they're like, wow, I focused so much on career that it can almost have this adverse reaction or like effect where then it kind of drops into like the 4th house energy, because that connection to the moon in the 4th house and the polarity where it's like they've worked hard to get to that point. And then these are the people that can be like, I've done what I've done. Like now my focus is on like, you know, my status when it comes to my home. So it might've been, I want to be, you know, the CEO. And then it's like, well, I want to be grandma, or I want to be grandpa, or I want to be, you know, I want to be a mom. There is something there that's about really the shift emotionally being about what's going on once you feel like you've reached that kind of pivotal point of completion. So 63 to 69 is important. That can also be a time where emotionally you're feeling like, okay, I've, you know, reached this point where now I'm like ready to retire and I've done everything I need to do, or you reach like a major milestone at that time. So obviously look at what's going on with Cancer in your chart and what like that major completion may be for you. So let's say you have your moon in the 11th house. This is going to represent age 70 to 76. And the moon in the 11th house is a strong emotional connection to your friendships. Very social, probably party coordinator. You can be very much in tune with humanitarian causes as well. And you may have a deep emotional security in your social relationships and a strong intuition for understanding the needs of other people. I think about like 70 to 76 and like where at least I've observed in some of my clients and also in some of my older relatives that they kind of get to this age and they're like, I just want to be around other people. Like I want to, you know, go and like have lunches and I want to be a part of groups and I want to like spend time with others and like collaborate and like, you know, really kind of connect and see what other people are doing. So I've seen, I think this more than some of the other ages really kind of tap into that 11th house moon. I feel like it's also about being around other people and being emotionally kind of tied to like other people's needs as well, and being very aware of what it means to have like that support system through a number of people. And it may not necessarily mean that they have to be family, but it may be friends that ultimately end up feeling like family. And that connection that you have, even when you start to feel like you're losing some of your family. And obviously as you're getting up in age, you know, to your, you know, mid to late 70s, you know, people start losing people. So there can also be this sense of being like, wow, you know, I lost somebody that kind of felt like that was like my sister, or that was like, you know, one of my relatives. Anyway, there's a really strong social nature kind of connected to this 11th house moon, and you might really kind of realize what your purpose is and who your true friends are and who you're meant to be kind of supporting, and like what your goals are when it comes to helping support kind of the collective right around that particular age. Obviously look for where Cancer is in your chart to get a little bit more insight in how that's going to be fulfilled. And then finally, if you have your moon in the 12th house, all right? So if you have your moon in the 12th house, this is connected to ages 77 to 82, should we be so lucky to get to that age. And obviously it has a natural association with that age because that's connected to Pisces. So the moon in the 12th house, it's an interesting placement. This can be someone who obviously is extremely intuitive, a very strong emotional connection to their subconscious, to their dreams, to the hidden aspects of life. They can be a bit of a hermit. There can be a sense of having a deeper need for emotional security in their inner world. But they also have this sense of like having a strong understanding of like the mysteries of life and like hidden things and like understanding and uncovering things. They also sometimes have like a storyline where there is some sense of detachment from like a mother figure, or feeling like mother figures were not always available for health reasons or mental or emotional reasons, or maybe they were absent in some way. So I've seen these people in particular be people who are like very much likely to almost like want to adopt other people, whether this is children or friends, or, you know, they would be like the adopted mom, you know, to other kids in the group, and they would kind of like take them in and kind of nurture them. When I think about age 77 to 82, there is this sense of, because of the connection of like Pisces and Neptune, of like everything dissolving. It can be, you know, sure, there can be dissolving of vision and having a difficulty maybe hearing and seeing things, but the intuition is strong. The intuitive knowing is strong. The life experience is strong. And this sense of kind of being like, you know what, it is what it is. Like everything is just kind of doing its thing. This is the natural cycle of things kind of completing, and a sense of fulfillment and completion and accomplishment in knowing like what they've been through. So for these particular placements, there can be true emotional growth that can actually happen at the end of life when they're kind of reaching the tail end of their 70s, going into their 80s. And this is when they really start to kind of realize the overall purpose and the meaning of their life. But there can also be this sense of just living very heart-centered and being very generous and very compassionate to other people, as well as animals. I have noticed that with moon in the 12th house. Anyway, that was my profile that I did on Cancer. Obviously, I know this may correlate to a lot of people because we touched on the 4th house as well as the moon. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know. Do you have a Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or a particular emphasis in your 4th house? I'd love to hear from you guys. I always love hearing your comments and hearing what you guys have to say. Definitely one of my favorite houses. I would have to say the 4th house and Cancer, probably one of my favorite kind of placements. I always joke, if you haven't seen my chart, you can check it out. It's on my website. But I have 2 stelliums in my chart. I have 4 planets in Capricorn and 4 planets in Scorpio in my 2nd and my 4th house. And so I'm kind of like a Scorpiocorn, but I really resonate with the 2nd and the 4th house because that's where the planets are. And even like putting this together, kind of like, you know, reading it and thinking about it, I have Uranus and Venus and Saturn and Neptune in my 4th house, and they're all kind of conjunct within a couple degrees. And I have Jupiter in Cancer. So I definitely really resonate with like a lot of like the Cancer placements, the, you know, being homesick, the intuitive stuff, the working from home. I feel like I'm like the stereotype for like some of the Cancer placements. So I'd love to hear from you guys if you have similar placements. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you click the bell button below so you can continue to keep following this series. Next month, we're going to be touching on the Sun. We're going to be touching on Leo and the 5th house, and we're going to talk about all of the importance of that. And we will be continuing this whole series. So until next time, I'll catch you guys all back here soon. Enjoy the last bits of Cancer season, and I will see you here tomorrow where we're going to be doing live tarot. You can catch me at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you check out the link in the community tab if you'd like to sign up for my tarot readings tomorrow evening. All right, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow, and take care.